Welcome back. And today we're diving into a topic that many assume they understand, but few have actually explored deeply, the true meaning of prayer in the Quran. Before we get into today's deep dive, we'd really appreciate your support. If you find value in this podcast, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. It helps us reach more people who are searching for truth. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. All right, now let's get into it. Most people associate prayer with a structured, ritualistic act. Stand, bow, prostrate, repeat. But does the Quran really describe it that way? Or is it something much more powerful, something that shapes our intellect, our society, and our very way of life? All right, let's break it down. When we look at the Quran, we see that prayer is described as something transformational. It's not just about personal worship. It's a commitment to upholding divine guidance. And here's the key. Prayer isn't just about what you do, it's about what it produces. Take this verse from Surah Al-Ankabut, 29:45. Recite what has been revealed to you of the book and establish it. Indeed, it prevents immorality and wrongdoing. So right away, we see that true prayer isn't just about going through the motions. It's supposed to change your behavior. If someone prays 5 times a day but still lies, cheats, or oppresses others, then what's really happening? The Quran is clear. Real prayer prevents corruption. And that brings us to something crucial. What does it mean to actually establish prayer? A lot of people think prayer is just about a personal act of devotion. But when we read the Quran, we see that it actually carries two major responsibilities. First, it's about education and intellectual development. When you engage with divine knowledge, when you seek truth, when you teach others, that's part of prayer. The Quran calls on people to seek knowledge and uphold truth, and that's why prayer is often linked to reciting revelation and teaching wisdom. Second, prayer is about social justice. It's about taking responsibility for others, standing for what's right, and helping the oppressed. Surah Al-Ma'un, 107, 1-7, calls out those who pray but ignore the needs of the poor and the orphans. The message is clear. If your prayer doesn't translate into action, it's meaningless. That's a tough reality check, isn't it? It forces us to ask, what's the real purpose of prayer? If it's just about going through ritual motions, then why does the Quran tie it so strongly to knowledge, justice, and community support? Now let's talk about the physical side of prayer, because that's where a lot of people get confused. Take Surah Al-Mursalat 77:48, where it says, when it is said to them, bow down, they do not bow. Now, if bowing was only about physically bending over, then why would this be such a big deal? But if it means humbling yourself before divine truth, then the message becomes clear. Real submission isn't about bending your body, it's about bending your ego. The same goes for prostration. In Surah Al-Inshiqaq 84:21, it says, and when the Quran is recited to them, they do not prostrate. Does this mean people are refusing to put their heads on the floor? Or does it mean they refuse to submit to divine guidance? Again, the Quran makes us think beyond surface-level actions. And what about the whole idea of facing a specific direction while praying? Surah Al-Baqarah 2:115 states, to Allah belongs the east and the west, so wherever you turn, there is the face of Allah. That's a direct challenge to the idea that true prayer is tied to a physical location. The Quran emphasizes spiritual orientation, not just which way your body is facing, but which way your heart and mind are aligned. And then there's the big question, how many times is prayer actually commanded? If we go by common tradition, the answer is 5. But when we actually open the Quran, we see something very different. In Surah Hud 11:1-14, it says, establish it at the two ends of the day and in the early part of the night. That's 2 times, not 5. In Surah Al-Isra 17:78, we see another reference to dawn and night, but no 5 fixed times. In Surah An-Nur 24:58, only 2 specific periods are mentioned. So the question is, where did the 5 times a day structure come from? Well, when we look into history, we find that the standardization of prayer happened long after the Quran was revealed. Many don't realize this, but the Zoroastrians had a practice of praying 5 times a day. This was common in Persia, and as Islamic rulership expanded into Persian lands, A lot of cultural elements were absorbed, including the structured prayer format. There's also influence from Christian monastic traditions, where structured prayer times were a thing. And, interestingly, even Hadith literature suggests that prayer originally started as 50 times a day but was supposedly reduced to 5 during Miraj, an event that isn't even mentioned in the Quran. So if 5 daily prayers weren't originally in the Quran, what was? The Quran consistently ties prayer to acts of charity and justice. Look at Surah Al-Baqarah 2177, where righteousness is described as belief in Allah, the last day, the angels, the book, and the prophets, and giving wealth in spite of love for it to relatives, orphans, the needy, travelers, those who ask, and to free slaves. The key takeaway? Prayer isn't just a personal act. It's about contributing to the betterment of society. It's about action, not just rituals. And in Surah Yunus 1087, there's an instruction that is deeply revealing. Prepare homes in Egypt and establish them as places of gathering. Here, prayer isn't about isolating yourself for worship. It's about building strong communities that uplift people. So let's wrap this up. If we go by the Quran alone, prayer is 1. More than a ritual, it's a transformative practice that shapes both individuals and society. 2. Not limited to outward performance, real prayer has real impact. 3. Not commanded 5 times a day. The Quran only specifies key moments. 4. Directly connected to charity and justice. You can't separate it from responsibility. 5. Not about strict physical movements. It's about submitting to divine guidance. Now here's the real question. If the Quran presents prayer as something so powerful, transformative, and deeply tied to social justice, then why has it been reduced to a robotic ritual? It's time to rethink everything we've assumed. Because prayer, true prayer, isn't about how many times you do it. It's about how deeply it changes you and the world around you. Think about it.